Hello, Yoga for Arthritis community. I'm recording this at about 9 a.m. Pacific time on August 4th. Um, I think this must be the first Q&A from California. I know that the time of this Q&A keeps jumping around because things have been a little crazy in the life and times of me and the Yoga for Arthritis team. So I appreciate your patience and flexibility, and apologies to any of you who may have this as a regular appointment on your calendar and we keep moving it around on you. So I believe that this slot, which is the first Friday of the month at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern, is probably a safe bet most months, and we will try to keep the moving of it to a minimum when that's necessary. So I did not actually get any submitted questions for the Q&A this month. I did get a question by email that I answered, and I thought it might be useful to share with all of you. And then I can just highlight some things that we're working on at Yoga for Arthritis. So I'm going to flip over to my email and share the question, which is, I've been asked to teach a drum circle right after I teach a Yoga for Arthritis class. Considering that some of these folks may stay for the drum class, what do you think this population would be better equipped for? Using their hands to drum or drumsticks? Of course, haven't decided what we'll be drumming on. It could be an upside down plastic garbage can, or maybe a softer surface. Or maybe I can have an array of implements that they can choose from. I imagine some people will be in chairs and others may be on the floor. If you have suggestions, I would love to hear them. So certainly, as first of all, I love this question because I love that someone is considering accessibility in a drum circle, and the benefits, if we think about drumming and some of the benefits that drumming might offer in terms of vibration and rhythm and energy and community and spirituality. There are lots of reasons that somebody would want to engage in a drum circle, and also some real barriers for people with arthritis and chronic pain. And so I love how this question considers that challenge. And as with asana practice, certainly the more variety, the better. Make it a buffet like we do with asana, like we do with props. Maybe you try this, maybe you try that. And as we do in our Yoga for Arthritis teachings, make it a non-hierarchical buffet. So whether you sit in a chair or on the floor, whether you use drumsticks or you use your hands, is inconsequential. It's whatever. For some reason, it says that my internet is unstable. So hopefully I didn't cut out for too long there. But I have a few additional suggestions to offer there. One is what we use to drum. So the question is, should it be hands or should it be sticks? And those are not the only options. So if you think about drumming, like, what makes a sound? So you can use palms, and certainly for somebody like me who has wrist involvement, instead of, an action that is going to involve wrist flexion and extension, I would tend to use a drumming movement that would keep my wrist stable. And I could even do that with a wrist brace on and still make sound and get movement and not exacerbate my wrist pain by a movement that involves my wrists. And so the same is true for other issues like thumbs, okay? So you could be wearing a brace, I'm starting to get thumb involvement. So a brace that holds my thumb stable, I could be just using my fingertips, for example. You can also use fists. So in the same way that we use fists, I use fists a lot in my yoga practice, cat cow and plank. I use fists. So that's a way to keep my wrist stable. But for somebody who has arthritis in their hands, pounding with fists may feel better, more comfortable. The open hands may not be accessible. And the way that the vibration moves through the open hand may be uncomfortable in a way that, so fists kind of allows you to make more of a sound with less of a force because it's concentrated. Also elbows. So for arthritis in the wrists and hands, you can use elbows on the drum. You can also change it up. So, a change is as good as a rest. There's a saying, the best position is the next one. And so we use that in ergonomics when we're talking about seating positions. I actually just ordered a chair for my office. It's going to allow me to sit in a bunch of different positions because we want to stay mobile. Any position that you're in for a long period of time is going to start to put pressure on the joints in the same way that a repetitive motion puts strain on the joints, can exacerbate discomfort. So changing it up from palms to fists to elbows, using one hand. And, you don't have to. So let's say, there's a particular rhythm being taught, bum, 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 right? So if someone is taking a break or their pain is exacerbated, they could skip that middle beat and just hit the first beat and the last beat. So giving a little bit more time and space so that it's not as rapid of a movement may be a little more comfortable on the joints. It's also possible to use the feet. So instead of doing that rhythm with the hands on an upside down garbage can or a drum or whatever it is, you can do the same rhythm with the feet on the floor. And you can take a break from using the hands and switch to the feet. You can also alternate. So if we were doing that rhythm, bum, 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 it could be hand, foot, hand, hand, foot, hand, right? And so that spaces out so it's not as rapid of a movement and it's not all of the pressure on one joint. You can also change the force. So if you're hitting the drum hard, it's going to be more of a vibration through the joints, but it's also possible to do the same thing lightly. And if you're in a drum circle, your sound is going to be a part of the cacophony of sound. So you as a single drummer are not responsible for carrying the group and making the loudest sound or being as loud as the person next to you. You can be a part of the rhythm and be a softer, subtler tone. You can also, in the same way that like you could use drumming mallets or drumming brushes. So drumming mallets or drumming brushes, actually drumming brushes in particular, are going to send less of a vibration through the joints. That's going to be a softer sound. It's going to be a different sound that maybe adds some nuance to the experience, the sound that's coming out of the whole drum circle, and maybe is going to be gentler on the hands. There are also different things that drumsticks can be made of. So, for example, this is something that I recommend when people ask about knitting, which can be a lot of force on the joints, using bamboo knitting needles that have some give to them instead of using metal knitting needles that have less give. Also using a thicker knitting needle, which is going to end up with a looser stitch, but the smaller the needle, the tighter your grip has to be on it. So similarly, you could use a drumming baton that's wider and thicker and easier to hold rather than very small drumsticks that are more challenging to grip and maintain a grip on. So there are lots of different things that you could hold onto that would make it a little bit easier. And then I also say, right, so use a light touch or a harder one as comfort allows. Go slower if needed, by skipping every other beat, as an example, stomp on the floor as an alternative, or a break from the hand movement or in an alteration. Okay, and then I say, of course, if we're, making this a mindfulness practice. So any activity can be a mindfulness practice. Washing the dishes can be a mindfulness practice. Folding the laundry can be a mindfulness practice. Take breaks, listen to the body, right? So you have to pay attention to how you're feeling and not just push through it because it's fun or it feels good, knowing that you're going to be in pain the next day because you pushed it too far, which is the same thing that we would suggest for an asana practice. So, even if that means taking a break and giving your hands a little bit of a massage, or your feet or rolling a ball or whatever. And you can also, I'm a dancer. So, when I'm in a drum circle, I tend to be dancing more than drumming, or at least as much. And so you don't have to be making sound all of the time. You can be moving with the rhythm of the beat and being a part of that experience without actually making sound. Notice your posture, right? So if we're slouched, hunched over, drumming, then that's going to affect how our body feels in terms of not just the hands and wrists, but also what's going on with the back and with the spine. So being aware of our posture, having an open heart, looking out, being a part of the group, breathing while we're involved in that practice. So making it a mindfulness practice with all of our tools. And I also suggest, it's fine to stop and just listen and just take in the sound and the feeling of that vibrating through the body. You can stop and sit and close your eyes and just be immersed in the sound. That is completely legitimate. And even taking this a step further, imagine that vibration. So remember that stress grows bone. So imagine that vibration strengthening the bone, stimulating bone growth. You could also feel the mood boosting hormones that happen as a result of raising the vibration, being in community, in connection. And so enhance the effects of the drum circle on your own well-being by really leaning into that, noticing it, amplifying it. And then I say, most of all, find joy, however that may be available moment to moment. And, the Yoga for Arthritis motto is get up and live your joy. That doesn't mean that we're not experiencing pain and discomfort. It is possible to experience joy despite the pain and discomfort. It's possible to experience joy within the pain and discomfort, simultaneous to the pain and discomfort. So it is possible to experience the joy of a drumming circle, even if your wrists hurt or your hands hurt, or and the discernment to decide, given that I'm in this drum circle and I want to experience joy, what decisions, what actions, what kind of participation is going to optimize my well-being and minimize the harm. And that is yoga philosophy applied to a drumming circle. And so that may mean that I am feeling the rhythm in my body. It may mean that I am tapping my foot with that rhythm. It may mean that I'm participating with my elbows. It may mean that I'm taking a break, whatever that is for you. And so if you have the opportunity to be in a drum circle, you need not sit out because you're living with arthritis. Find a way in. And if you are someone who has the opportunity to facilitate a drum circle, you have the opportunity to make it an inclusive experience for everyone who's there by offering suggestions of lots of different ways to participate. And you can drum with your elbows even if your hands don't hurt. You can see, what does that sound like? What does it sound like if I alternate palms and elbows? It makes a different sound. adds to the rhythm in a different way? What if I keep my hands in my lap for a while, even if I'm not experiencing pain there, and I play with what does it mean to participate in the drum circle with my feet? So, as someone who's facilitating, you can also encourage people to be aware of their posture and feeling the energy moving through the body. You can make it a mindfulness practice for everyone, which allows everyone to benefit from that, whether or not they're living with arthritis and chronic pain. So just a few thoughts about drum circles, and hopefully you can see how that could apply to lots of different activities that we might do that utilize the body, that can be made inclusive, that can be practiced in alignment with ahimsa and self-care in maybe non-traditional ways. Okay, so I also will share that we are deep into the book club, and I am really loving our weekly chats. I think we just finished chapter 5, maybe, or headed into chapter 6. Great discussion. And so it is, if you are a member, the book club is free. It is not too late to join. You can jump in at any time. It's best if you've read the chapter, and you can come with questions or thoughts, but don't let that be a barrier to showing up. Just come, and there is lots of discussion happening about people's own lived experience with arthritis and chronic pain, choices that people make as teachers and therapists, how to apply some of the concepts of yoga for arthritis and reflect on experiences and reframe them. You can go back. So if you're a member, not only can you join at any time, but you also have access to all of the recordings. So the sessions that we've already done for chapters 1 through 5 are in the membership. So you could catch up if you want to, but you could also catch up later. So this is not, even though we're progressing through the book and therefore through the koshas, each chapter is independent. And so I may refer back to things that we've discussed previously, but it's not like a novel where you won't know what's going on if you jump in. So feel free to jump in. And if you're not a member, you should be, because it's an amazing deal. Well, you must be a member because you're here at the Q&A, which is a member benefit. So all of you who are listening, you have access to the book club. Come join us. Also, just want to give you a heads up that level 3 is scheduled. If you are a yoga teacher and you are interested in becoming a yoga for arthritis teacher, it is not too late to catch up on 1 and 2 before 3 happens. I think maybe it starts in February or something like that. So you still have time, but I would suggest getting started right away because it takes people different amounts of time to get through. So level 1 is self-paced. Level 2 is with a mentor. Level 1 is not always self-paced, but right now that's what's available is the self-paced version. You're still interacting with me. I'm still responding to you, giving you feedback, but you move at your own pace. If you have already done level 1, but not level 2, you're going to want to get into level 2 right away so that you can finish it before level 3. I only offer level 3 once a year. So if you miss it this time around, you're going to have to wait a year for that to happen. Also, for those of you who are not yoga teachers yet, but would like to be, we are working on getting this 200-hour going. It is in the process of preparation for Yoga Alliance submission and approval. And we want to make sure that it is Yoga Alliance approved before we launch it. It is a lot of paperwork. Even though Yoga Alliance is just a registry, it doesn't, there are no training competencies or qualifying exams or anything like that, but the process to get onto the registry is pretty extensive. So we are working on that, and we will keep you posted, but we're hoping to have this launched in the next few months, like maybe November timeframe. Do not hold me to that because it's going to depend on Yoga Alliance and also our faculty availability. But we are sending out a poll to ask people when they'd be ready to start, and also about times and days. We we have people all over the world, and like when it's daytime for some, it's nighttime for others, and when it's a weekend for some, it's a weekday for others, and it is virtually impossible to schedule this at a time that is going to work for everyone who's interested. So we are going to do the absolute best to meet the needs of everyone we can. I feel really strongly that becoming a yoga teacher should not happen by watching a bunch of recordings on your own, on your laptop at home. Um, I think that it requires interaction with a teacher and in community and with feedback and ideas being shared and reflected. And so we are going to require that people are there in person. And it's a come as you are training. So if that means you're in bed in a flare, then show up anyway. And it will be recorded for you to be able to go back to if you want to try things out. It's not being recorded so that you can do it on your own. Obviously, things come up and we know that people will need to miss, and we've built some of that into the expectations. But just so you're aware that that's what's going on. And the podcast is coming. So I have already done like 3 or 4 recordings. It's interview style. So I've had recorded conversations with a few people already. They're really rich and fun. It's on the longer side. They're about an hour long. I'm a talker and I have a lot to discuss with the people I've invited. I think the conversations are really rich and that you're going to find it beneficial. So we will be launching that soon, and I think that they're going to be added every other week. So if you subscribe, you'll see them come live as they get added. And if there are people that you would really like me to invite to the podcast, please let me know. Send us an email and say, hey, I think it would be great if Stephanie had a conversation with so-and-so, or if there's a topic that you're really interested in having discussed on the podcast, I will explore that possibility. So I'm very interested in hearing from you and making this something that you think is useful. And also my second book is in the publication process. Those of you who have published a book know that it is a long process, and so it will be months until it's available. It still has to go through copy editing and design, but it is in the hands of the publisher for that process. This is a memoir, so it has yoga in it for sure. And it has philosophy, ideas, reflections related to yoga and to this work. But it's about the year of my life when, during writing my last book, my mother died, and I experienced a traumatic brain injury, and my family was living in 2 different places. So it's about that experience from a variety of different perspectives. So each chapter is a different perspective on that experience. So hopefully those of you who know and love me will be interested in hearing my story through memoir, and I will certainly let you know when that becomes available. It's also relevant to anyone who has had a loved one with cancer or seen a loved one through the end of life process, or lived apart from their family for a variety of reasons that happens, or struggled with a traumatic brain injury or any other unexpected event that renders you less functional than you're used to being. So I think that it has application to a lot of other people's life experience that you might find interesting or valuable. So that's what comes to mind off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more, but to be continued. Please, please, please submit your questions for the September Q&A so that I can make these Q&As relevant to your needs. And if you can, show up live, because it's great to have a human being to chat with, like I did last month, instead of just talking to my computer. So, all right. To the entire Yoga for Arthritis community, we are grateful for you and for all that you're doing in the world, whether you are someone who practices yoga and therefore changes the world with how you show up, and or you're a yoga professional who brings the practices of yoga to others in ways that can be transformative. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.